And Karen, it looks like you brought in this wonderful chair.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the piece and anything else you have here?
Certainly. This is one piece of a set of 7. I think they were called parlor suites or salon suites. And it came out of the Royal Suite at the Parker House Hotel in Chicago.
Wow.
My great-great-grandmother bought it. And the Parker House Hotel was finished, and a few weeks later, the entire hotel burned down because of the Chicago fire. They rebuilt the hotel, and this was in the next generation of the hotel.
Okay.
So my great-grandmother bought it, and it's been in my family. And my grandmother, during the Depression, her husband passed away, and she sold everything she had except for these 7 pieces of furniture and put them in storage and moved to California and paid. That's the only thing she could afford to pay on. She paid on the storage, and several years later, my aunt, when she married, took it out of storage, and we've had it ever since.
Great. So you have, are the other pieces chairs, or do you have other things?
We have the settee and 2 armchairs and then 4 side chairs. And
yeah, this piece you have right here looks really great. I see there's some design in the armrests.
Yes.
Do you know anything more about that?
I believe the research we've done, this is done by John Jelliff, and he carved the arms, and generally his pieces had the bust of a woman, and the ones with the men are a little bit rarer.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I always thought that looked like Christopher Columbus.
And have you guys always known, has your family always known the value of these? And,
yes, and it's a great responsibility to have to take care of the furniture.
I'm sure.
Yes.
You probably need a pretty big room to fit all those pieces in.
The last several houses have been built around having a formal living room and a formal dining room, just so we can have the furniture there.
That's
and we
great.
we use it. They're not just there for show.
Great. So what did you find out today at the appraisal fair? Did you hear good news?
Oh yes, definitely. She feels like the entire set could be between $60,000 and $75,000. So definitely more insurance, and we will stick with the plan that if the house catches on fire, you grab the furniture first.
We're here at the KLRU Appraisal Fair with Tamara, and you brought in this beautiful vase. Can you tell us a little bit about the item you brought today to get appraised?
Well, it's from my aunt who lived in Seattle, Washington, and I just always admired it and thought it was a beautiful, simple piece. So when she passed away, I brought it back to Austin.
Great. Yeah. So do you know how she got the piece? Or?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
Do you have any idea how old it was at the time?
No, I don't.
So you just really liked
I just thought it was really simple and pretty, and I like pottery, so
great.
I thought it was a pretty piece.
So how long have you had it in your possession?
I've had it for about 6 years.
Okay. Yeah. Just out in the house? You just
yes, it was
enjoy
just sitting on my dresser where the cats roam. Which is not a
put
good.
Any change in there? Or?
No, but I decided that's not a good place for it.
Yeah. What made you decide to bring it in to get checked out?
I just I knew it was a rookwood pottery, and it was just so pretty that I was just curious how much it was worth.
So what did the appraiser tell you today at the studio?
She said she felt it was worth from $5,000 to $6,000, and
wow,
and I was surprised.
Yeah, definitely. That's some
very
great news.
Surprised. Yeah.
Did you have any idea of the worth of it before today?
No.
Wow. So you said you're going to get it away from your cats.
Definitely.
Is there any other care they recommended for the piece?
She said you could put some art putty on the bottom of it to secure it so it won't tip over.
Oh, okay.
And other than that, and keep it out of direct sunlight.
Okay.
So I plan to do that.
Well, we really appreciate you bringing this in
Sure
to the
thing.
KLRU Appraisal Fair today.
It was very fun. Thank you for doing this.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, we have here a treasure of Austin history, and Bob's brought this piece in. Bob, can you just tell us a little bit about what you knew before today about the piece?
Well, this piece was in my grandparents' home over on Swedish Hill. It was built in 1916, and it was actually hanging in the parlor, and nobody really paid much attention to it. My father had told me that this was a work by Peter Mansbendel. He was wood carver, and Peter Mansbendel and my grandfather and Huguenot Weigel were all close friends back in the turn of the century, 20s and 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And that this piece here was a prototype of a wood carving. That's basically all I knew about it. My father died in 1977, and the family was splitting things up. And I said, I'll take this piece along with some other things.
Mm-hmm. So you liked it more just for the look. Did you know the history of the item at the time?
Well, yes, I've always been a big history buff of Austin in the first place, since our family goes back to about 1901 here.
Okay. Wow, great. Did you have any idea of the worth of the item before bringing it into the KLRU Appraisal Fair?
Not really. No, I just kind of tossed it off. I knew that it was about 25 years ago, Laguna Gloria Art Museum borrowed it from me to put in a Weigel Mansbendel exhibition. And at the time, they told me, if memory serves me correctly, they said it was worth about $1,000.
Okay.
We lowballed it.
Yeah, Peter, can you tell us a little bit about the piece and maybe the history of the item?
The reason why I say we is because I worked at Laguna Gloria for about 15 years. And while I was there, along with some of the exhibitions locally that we would install, the Weigel Mansbendel show stands out in my mind because there were works in that exhibition that were endemic to the history of the house as well as the state of Texas. And this was one of them. And if you look at the center of it, I believe it's essentially a relief of the Battle of the Alamo, correct?
That's correct.
And that's along the front here. And then there are these little vignettes on either side that are of and about Texas landscape and
That's correct.
Texas history. And again, as Bob has mentioned, this piece is a relief that was a prototype or a mock-up for a carving that Mansbendel created for Clara Driscoll. Clara Driscoll being one of the people, or possibly the most prominent person, who saved the Alamo at the time, and henceforth she commissioned Peter Mansbendel to carve this piece of wood. And the story goes, I believe the piece of wood is a beam.
The beam of one of the beams that survived through the Battle of the Alamo.
Was part of the Alamo structure itself. And when I saw this and coming through our wonderful KLRU fundraiser, I thought, well, what a perfect piece that speaks to Austin's history as well as the history of Texas, and a very important piece that I think needs to be preserved for all of the right reasons, forever and ever. So, and I'm so glad that you've done that.
Well, it's not particularly going anywhere, so
I can't imagine it will. Yeah.
And Stephanie brought in this great doll. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got the doll?
Well, my mother and my aunt went to Europe in 1929, and my aunt bought her in Florence, Italy.
Oh wow!
She's a Lenzi doll.
Okay. And how long have you had the doll?
I've had her about since '74, I guess.
Okay. And have you had this had the doll appraised before the KLRU Appraisal Fair?
Yes, I have.
Okay. When was that? What did they say?
In '99, I had her appraised, and they said she was worth about $1,600.
Wow. Okay. Have you had any special care for it since then?
I bought a special cabinet for her, a glass cabinet, and she sits up on my bookshelf.
Okay, great. Well, and what did you find out about the doll today?
She said she's worth between $2,500 and $3,500.
Wow. So the last 10
she's
years.
Gone up.
Yeah, definitely. Did they say anything particularly about the features of the dolls that they especially liked?
She's probably a boudoir doll.
Okay.
Lindsay made all kinds of dolls, and this is the one that flappers used to keep on their beds. My aunt was a flapper, so I'm sure that's why she's picked this doll.
Great. So are you going to care for it differently now that you know it's worth as much as it is?
She's still in her glass case.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks so much for bringing her in today. This is a really great piece, and we're glad you brought it into the Appraisal Fair.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad I did too.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.
We have this great quilt that Mary brought in to the KLRU Appraisal Fair today, and we have our appraiser here that's going to tell a little bit about the piece.
This is a wonderful piece that dates between 1880 and 1900.
How long have you had the piece? Has it been in your possession for a while?
No, I've had it for about 10 years.
My mother collected quilts, and this is one that she had collected, and then she gave it to my sister, who passed it on to me 10 years ago.
There are two quilt block patterns. There is the Lemoyne Star pattern, and also this is known as Friendship Star or Evening Star. Mary calls this piece the Wyoming Star because of its origin in Wyoming. The border is known as a flying geese border. As I recall, the piece is hand-pieced and hand-quilted. It has a cotton batting, and it is in very good condition. One of the fun things about this quilt is that it has the curved borders. It has soft corners rather than having an angular or square corner. It's bright, it's colorful, it's in good condition. It has this beautiful Lancaster blue in the background, in the sashing, and in the border. And as I said, I have seen the quilt before, but Mary came back so that we could do a value. And Mary, today, I think this quilt on the open market would go for about $600.
Great. Wonderful.
That's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Did you have any idea of the value of the quilt before you brought it in today?
I had a suspicion, but I didn't know for sure.
Well, great. Yeah, great news. Thanks for bringing this in today.
Thank you.
And Jim, can you tell us a little bit about this piece and why you decided to bring it in today?
Yes, this is a piece that my mother bought in 1931 when she just got out of college, and she was visiting an antique store in the French Quarter of New Orleans. And she was looking at pieces in this store, and as she was leaving, the proprietor said, if I take you back where you were and everything and show you the piece that you really like, will you buy it? And she said, well, no, all I've got is $10, and that's for the rest of my trip here in New Orleans with my friend. And he said, well, let me show you anyway. And he took her back, and he actually picked out this particular desk. So he convinced her to go ahead and buy it. And I think he took either $5 or $10 from her, and so she's had it ever since. But what was interesting is that the proprietor, Mr. Feldman of Feldman Antiques there in New Orleans, it told her it was out of the estate of Empress Eugenie at her Farnborough estate in England when she was in exile. Of course, this is after her husband Napoleon had died, and he said this piece came over with a bunch of other furniture in the mid-20s from that estate. So we've never been able to authenticate it, but we decided we'd bring it up here and see what the appraiser here had to say.
So was this something that you used around the house, or have you always kind of known that it's a valuable item?
We've known that it has some value. We didn't know what kind of value that it had, and so we've actually have not used it other than as a display piece.
So what did you learn today at the KLRU Appraisal Fair?
Well, one that the lady that appraised it says it's more than likely French, but then it has some Italian to it. So she wasn't quite sure. Of course, there's pieces on it that are missing, that the veneer has fallen off, and she said it's not not in excellent condition, and that it could be worth $15,000 if it was in excellent condition, and maybe $7,500, $5,000 to $10,000 in the condition that it's in.
Great. Will this have a more prominent role in your home now, or how will it change how you show it now that you know the value?
It'll probably stay where we've had it in the hallway, and hope that it doesn't get bumped any more than it already has.
Well, thanks so much for bringing this piece in today. We really appreciate it, and thanks for coming to the KLRU Appraisal Fair.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity to come.
All right, Bob has another piece that he brought in today to the KLRU Appraisal Fair, and this also caught the eye of our appraiser. So, Bob, can you tell us why you decided to bring this piece today?
Well, this piece I really brought in only because of mostly of curiosity as who the artist was and what little I knew about him. This piece was hanging in the living room of my grandparents' house, and again, when my father passed away, I took a liking to it. Not so much because of the watercolor, but because of the framework was another man's spindle carving.
Okay.
And to me, it kind of went with the other. The painting itself, I only knew from what I'd heard from my father and grandfather that Mr. Gideon was a professor at the University of Texas, and this particular piece was painted from a view from South Austin. They said it was Travis Heights Boulevard. That's basically all I knew about it, and that I was curious about Mr. Gideon.
So this was just curiosity that brought it in. You didn't really know the value of this piece.
No, I absolutely knew of no value whatsoever.
Well, this one we had a lot of excitement out of. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about this piece and what you liked about it?
Well, when I saw this, I immediately thought, what a cultural treasure for Austin, as well as for the state of Texas. What you have here are two men who are essentially peers of the time period. You have two master artists, one a craftsman, the other one a painter, essentially. Both of them, to a degree, are educators in that Manspendel's work is found at the University of Texas on campus. And then Gideon himself is a UT professor in architecture who was very cluey about locations and finding that most important place to paint from in plein air, unplein air, essentially on site. He documented lots of locations here in Austin as well as throughout Texas, including Mexico. He went down to Mexico and painted a lot of locations there. So when Bob brought this in, of course, and showed us the fireplace inset, and then I saw this, I thought, well, what a package. I mean, you have here what essentially is the quintessential Austin cultural historical treasure, where you have both the artist and the craftsman together as one in one work. In terms of value goes, it's invaluable. Off the top of my head, I would say it quite possibly, it's certainly in the 5 figures, and it could be even higher.
Bob, is this the answer you were looking for when you wanted to see who Gideon was?
Well, it's quite surprising, to say the least. It leaves you a little bubbly, let me tell you.